An Air Force retired staff sergeant and a security forces instructor, both living in San Antonio, are now in Colorado Springs for this year's Warrior Games.
Tonight, Eyewitness News reporter Luke Simons visits with the Military City locals as they take advantage of an opportunity to be with others just like them.
When it comes to the Warrior Games, it's obvious these injured, ill, and wounded warriors still have that competitive drive. And although winning every match is a goal, it's not necessarily the most important part of these games.
We always talk about how the competition isn't really the big part. The competition is a vehicle to get us close together, to get us to understand that there are other people going through some of the same things that we're going through and learning how to adapt and overcome those things.
Anthony Pearson is a retired staff sergeant now living in San Antonio. Anthony suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, and every day he's amazed by the progress he and his teammates make.
It's just a sense that you understand that nothing is impossible. There are guys out here, they may be missing an arm, they may be missing a leg, maybe missing 2 legs, and they're still out here making it happen the same way that able-bodied folks are able to do.
Brian Williams is a security forces instructor at Joint Base San Antonio's Lackland Air Force Base. He also happens to be an amputee. Although the competition is stiff, when it comes down to it, every team, Air Force, Army, Marines, Navy, and Special Forces, all share a common goal.
We're all one team, one fight. We get out, we compete, we all have a common goal in mind. And as long as we focus on that, it doesn't even matter who's got invisible wounds, who doesn't. It's just being part of a team, being part of a community, and just getting the job done together.
Williams and Pearson were both quick to mention how much it helps living in San Antonio. Military City USA backs its military members, and both are appreciative of that support.
I mean, I feel just like they are passionate about the Spurs. I feel the same way they're passionate about their warriors, their military.
Anthony, Brian, and their Air Force teammates made it through another day of competition here in Colorado Springs. Brian and Anthony are in a combined 11 different events. They finished up the preliminary round of sit-down volleyball and wheelchair basketball today. They'll hope to bring home a medal later on this week. Reporting from the Warrior Games in Colorado Springs, Luke Simons, KINS 5 Eyewitness News.